Good afternoon to the viewers of today's webinar on research methodology analysis of data. A very pertinent topic in the research domain. And thanks to my team, led by Saloni Jain, by profession she is a chartered accountant, but she has taken this lead and she is doing wonders in the research committee in form of series of webinar where she understood the nitty-gritty of the research and she started imparting the knowledge through help of various faculties. And she started this series of webinar. In this series, today we are covering research methodology, analysis of data. Earlier, I attended one of the webinar wherein the topic of sample size selection, how to use sample, what are various data collection tools, and other things were discussed. Today, the learned speakers, none other than Dr. Anuva Bandopadhyay, would be taking this session. And he is well versed with various research methodology softwares, in particular Python, SAP ERP, Bloomberg, and many others. Just before starting of this webinar, I had a discussion with him. Don't go by his looks. He looks very young, but at the same time, he is having very vast experience in the research domain, and he would be doing justification with the subject. And I'm quite sure that he would be uh, definitely benefiting to the viewers and will impart knowledge on various analysis of data tools and research methodology. Let me take this privilege to introduce Mr. Dr. Anuva Bandopadhyay. He is an assistant professor working in the field of finance and accounting at International Management Institute, Kolkata. He is qualified PhD in finance and executive MBA from Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. He was vastly contributed in journals, publication, conference papers, industrial projects reports, book chapters. Currently, some projects are under review process. He is also software proficient, to name a few: Python, SAP ERP, Bloomberg, and many others. He also possesses 7 years of corporate experience as a senior project manager in the Siemens Limited, Kolkata. So I welcome the learned faculty today. We have presence of our learned chairman, the person who is leading the research committee in the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, the oldest technical committee of the institute, formed way back in 1955. CA Dr. Anuj Goyal, as by name, I have already used 2 degrees, is CA and doctor. His doctorate is CA, but it is my limitation. I can't write CS, CMA, and other degrees as well because his name will be short and degrees will be. So he's a member of all the 3 institutes: CA, CS, ICWA, doctorate, LLB, MCOM, DSA, DIRM, and many other qualifications is credit. Let me share with you. He's just joining to us. Before he joins, uh, I worked with him in the research committee. It's my 4th year in the research committee, as well as Anuj Goyalji is having 4th year continuous in the research committee. In 2004 also, he chaired this research committee. And every year we took various initiatives to, im- to impart knowledge to our members, to do something good for the profession, something for the nation. Internationally, we have proved that India is pioneer in the research domain. Very recently, on 19th of October, we conducted one international research award at Dubai, wherein 33 countries participate across the globe. Each and every continent participated in this research award. And why we chosen this Dubai? Dubai, we have a member base of 4,000 plus chartered accountants, and it's a global city where 82 nationalities are there in Dubai itself. So truly expanding our wings to the international era, the institute has conducted this award in Dubai. We I welcome my chairman, C. Anuj Goyalji. I've already briefed a lot about him, and he has taken various initiatives, and his able guidance is the only vision of the success story of research committee in last 4 years. We conducted various initiatives. We have taken various initiatives, but it would be appropriate if we learn from him, we hear from him. So I would request learned chairman for his final words of wisdom. And by the time he joined to address the gathering, so Chairman sir, today we have a very wonderful webinar. So I would request you to address the audience.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amit Agrawalji, our dynamic secretary of the research committee. And of course, we are having the presence of Dr. Apurva Bandyopadhyay, Dr. Aruna Bandyopadhyay ji, and we are having the presence of Raghavendra Sharma ji, very senior chartered accountant and founder of Transcendental CP Study Circle, and CAPC Jain ji, a very senior chartered accountant and founder of Transcendental CP Study Circle of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. And in this series of webinar on research methodology, today we are having this very important segment, analysis of data. And I'm really very happy to share with all the delegates that the research committee is trying its level best to see that how we can really do something very concrete for the cause of the profession and for the cause of the society and for the cause of the nation. Mr. Aruna Bandyopadhyay ji is the Assistant Professor at International Management Institute, Kolkata, and we are having the best of the faculty to deliberate on this very important topic, research methodology, analysis of data. And friends, you are very well aware that Institute of Chartered Accountants of India is the world's largest accounting body, and is trying its level best to see that how we can really do something very concrete through this oldest technical committee of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, the research committee, which was set up way back in 1955 with a view to undertake research activities to improve the quality of services rendered by our profession. Friends, as one of the very prominent researcher, Charles F. Kettering, aptly stated, research means that you don't know but are willing to find out. This emphasizes the significance of research as a tool for increasing knowledge and improving learning by implementing prospective ideas. Friends, research is a collaborative activity that draws on the diverse perspectives and expertise of extraordinary minds. I am glad to note that the chartered accountants are leaving no stone unturned in the arena of research, where they are contributing via their unique experience in accounting, auditing, taxation, finance, and other related subjects. Today is the fourth session of this series of the webinars, and we will be discussing this very important topic, analysis of data. I think for the researchers, it is very important to analyze the data. It is an important phase in research because it helps researchers to form meaningful findings, test a hypothesis, and acquire insights into their research issues. From healthcare to environmental science, the insights gained from data analysis contribute to the development of new treatments, technologies, and solutions to complex problems. Data analysis provides the basis for informed decision making and allows organizations, researchers, and policymakers to make choices supported by evidence, reducing uncertainty and minimizing risks. As we navigate an ever-changing environment, research is critical in helping us understand and adapt to new discoveries. It enables us to discover and capitalize on emerging trends as well as forecast and minimize any hazards. This webinar is expected to provide guidance on factor analysis, cluster analysis, chi-square test, ANOVA, multiple regression and correlation analysis, discriminant analysis, use of software and other topics that will allow participants to contribute to the research area by improving their knowledge for future research investigations. On that premise, I am convinced that the webinar will assist members in refining their research technical skills. And friends, you must be very well aware that as far as the research committee is concerned, we have taken n number of initiatives to see that how we can really contribute through this research committee for the cause of the profession, for the cause of the society and nation. We are having ICI Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting, which was instituted way back in 1958. And this ICI Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting is to recognize and reward organizations that vigorously adhere to the reporting practices, accounting principles, and other laws. Last year was a resounding success, followed by the highest number of applications received, that is 262, from various entities in different sectors, which were being assessed through a robust three-tier process. This year, we are having this ICI Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting at Raipur on 13th of January 2024. And we are trying to see that how we can have it in tier 2, tier 3 cities, so that the benefit of the research activities can be there in each and every part of the country. Then very great initiative, ICI International Research Award. I was the chairman 3 years back, and Dr. Amit Agarwalji was the secretary of the research committee. And in 2022, ICI through its research committee is organizing a global competition which aims to recognize and award the scholars, researchers, professionals, academicians in the domains of accounting, auditing, economics, finance, and taxation. And award would be considered to be the world's largest cross-border competition. And this year we have received, that is 172. The selection of awardee is done through a vigorous and two-tier process involving renowned international jury panel. The award ceremony was held on 19th of October 2023, this year itself, this month itself, last month at Dubai. Where we are having the largest presence of the members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India after India. Then we are having ICI Research Project Scheme. We initiated 4 years back ICI Research Project Scheme under the administrative control of the Dr. Amit Agarwal. We are trying our level best to see that how we can handhold the young researchers. And through this ICI Research Project Scheme, we are trying to see that the researchers from each and every part of the world can take very active interest, and the research findings of the various research project schemes have been handed over to the central government departments, various state governments, and it was implemented by the government departments and ministries, and we were successful to suggest the government that how the income can be enhanced and the leakages can be minimized in the various government departments. Then ICI Doctoral Scholarship Scheme, in which the members of the institute were keen to pursue PhD, young members who are not more than 40 years of age. We are having the provision of the scholarship to the deserving candidates who are registered as PhD scholars from any recognized university institution to pursue and complete their doctoral research in auditing, taxation, commerce, management, and accounting on full-time basis. We are having the provision of the scholarship of 75,000 rupees per month for 3 years for the deserving candidates. Then this year, this is the 75th year of the formation of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. So we do short-term research studies, which provides a platform for sharing new ideas, innovative research findings, and thought-provoking insights on various contemporary topics to CA members. And friends, you must be very well aware that research committee also formulates guidance notes on accounting aspects, which are issued under the authority of the council. It also brings out technical guides, studies, etc., on generally accepted accounting principles. As we are having the presence of our very, very prominent resource person, Dr. Aruna Bandyopadhyay, who is going to guide us on technical session on research methodology analysis of data. I would not like to come between all the delegates and our dynamic, vibrant speaker of the day. So I once again welcome all our honorable delegates. And of course, we are having the presence of our very, very prominent and senior chartered accountants present here. CA PC Jain sir and CA Raghavendra Sharma ji, our very, very senior chartered accountant, and they are the founder of a very, very prominent study circle, Transcendence CP Study Circle. I am really grateful to Dr. Amit Agrawal ji, the Secretary of the Research Committee, and Neha Bansal ji, and all the officers of the institute who are contributing in a great way for the cause of the profession through this research committee. So thank you very much, and over to Dr. Amit.
Thank you, Chairman, sir, for your vibrant deliberation, and you have given us the insight what is the expected from the faculty, and because even you can take this session very well. You are a doctorate, but you have taken this liberty to escape yourself, and now I would request Dr. Anuva Bandyopadhyay ji for his deliberation. Over to Doctor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak in front of the best talent of our country, that is the chartered accountants, right? I think I'm audible.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay,
please.
fine.
You continue.
Sure. So I was saying thank you very much for this opportunity. And I must recall that I am actually from a technical background, but my journey in finance actually started from a friend of mine who is a chartered accountant. And my interest in finance also started from there. So then onwards, I have developed this interest and I targeted to complete the PhD in finance, right? So I am always indebted to such friends and such knowledge for providing me this opportunity, right? And so it's like conducting this session in front of the best chartered accountants who are regularly analyzing lots of data is like showing means the people those who are doing the real analysis every day, right? So but I try to make this session on the perspective of research, right? And I try to deliver some insights that generally when a person is in a research field, how this methodological way of data analysis is being used, right? And then the process of presenting a research is being used. So I would share my screen. Is this visible? Okay. So thank you once again. And this topic is research methodology. And we have already had a few topics before this, the precursor to these topics, the research framework and the hypothesis formulation and the data collection and processing. So those actually builds up the overall purview of starting a topic that is a analysis of data, because analysis of data can only start when you have a well developed research question, a research methodology, and you have a research framework, and all the hypotheses are well designed, and the data is available and collected, and the data is also processed and cleaned, right? So then only we can start with the analysis of data part. So today's session, I will try to focus on the main topic of analysis of data, and further on, maybe publication and report writing is another session. So my first question to all the respected members, the chartered accountants and the audience in for this webinar. So I would like to understand what is your view about why is it necessary to analyze data in social science research? So I'd like to make this session as much as interactive as possible, so that because sometimes online speaking and delivering the lectures become monotonous, rather than if everyone participates, it becomes more interactive. So if you can please answer, some of you can provide your views, any keywords, points, whatever it comes to your mind. Then why do you think that data analysis is important?
So we are just waiting for the responses. As and when it will be received, I'll inform you. And it will be taking like 1 to 2 minutes extra. Whenever you are asking a question, we have to give audience 1 to 2 minutes to reply for the same.
Sure, no problem, no problem.
So you can proceed further. In case
Okay.
any response is received, I'll inform you.
Okay, sure, no problem. So, why I'm asking this question is this question builds up the requirement of learning this topic or discussing this topic. That what purpose does data analysis fulfills, right? And why it is very much important for social science research or finance research or management or business domain research, right? So,
Sir, we have
the-
received a response
okay,
from the Ramanathan ji that
okay.
to get the meaningful insights.
Okay, yeah, that's a very good answer. Definitely to get some meaningful insights, right? But I would say that meaningful insight, definitely data provides us the meaningful insight. But in research, what other purpose does the data fulfill? Means research. Do you think a research can be done without analyzing a data? Will it be possible to analyze some data, do some research without even analyzing some data? Okay, we will wait for this answer, but I shall continue with the presentation, right? So the point is that the data analysis thing in research, right, it tries to answer certain research questions, right? And why we do research? Because we want to have the answers for this question. So there are different aspects of this data analysis. In the first stage, we do a descriptive analysis, right? So descriptive analysis generally helps us to understand what actually happened, what is the problem, and where from we are coming into this research. So this descriptive analysis based on the collected data will help us to answer that what is happening, what is the real problem. And then we deliberate into why something is happening, right? What is the diagnostic analysis? So diagnose is like it's like in health terms we can say descriptive analysis is like a patient has visited to a doctor, and first the vital stats are being taken. So vital stats will tell him that what is the real problem, and then a diagnosis will start. So the diagnosis will try to answer why this thing has happened, and then the real prediction of the illness, the problem will happen, that why and what has happened and what further can happen and what is the future status, right? So these answers can only come when we have data. So without data, doing some research will not fulfill the purpose of alone of doing research. And in every field, whatever field we do research, we generally require data. It can be a qualitative data, it can be a quantitative data. And whatever data is available, through that, generally we try to answer these questions, that what is happening, why it is happening, what can happen, and then we provide some implications of this research, that what can be done with this research answers or whatever predictions that we have done, and what is the further course of action on this. So what can be done can only be answered when we have the data analysis in front of us. Fine. So have you received any other answers, or shall I
Yes, sir.
proceed?
We have received two responses more. First is from the KS Kasturi Ranganji. He said, understanding behavioral patterns. And another response is from the CA Aditi Tipnis. She replied to understand the complex situations.
Okay. Okay. So wonderful answers that I am getting. Thank you everyone for these answers. But I'd like to focus in more detail into this, and what I would like to share my view of why data analysis is important. And when I do my research in finance, how I look into the data, right? So if I say that this data that is available, right, using some data, and after doing the analysis, actually what we are trying to do through a research, and it is equally true for any uh, kind of a research, is storytelling, right? So can we say that data analysis is actually the business of storytelling, and we are trying to tell a story that is hidden inside the data. So each data is trying to tell us something, and there is a hidden story. And if we represent it correctly through our research framework, through our research write-up, then we can generally tell a story to the audience, to the people, those who are there, that what is the real problem, how this has been solved, or how this can be solved, and what are the real repercussions, right? So for me, and this I learned from my guide during my PhD, the data analysis is not alone analysis that anyhow you can do, but a data analysis should always convert to a story, right? And that story is the real outcome that we can get from data analysis. So that is the real question that I asked in the beginning. And I would think if we proceed with this set of mindset throughout this discussion and presentation, I think it will help us to learn more. And always our target will be to find out a story from this analysis. Right. So data analysis is storytelling. How many do you agree or you disagree? You can comment in the chat box, and then I can also listen to that. So going forward, right? So what is meant by actually analysis of data in research? What is actually analysis? How do we analyze a data in research, right? So there's a definition given in the book by C.R. Kothari in Research Methodology. I think many of you are pursuing PhD or trying to pursue or thinking of pursuing a PhD. They must be knowing this. The term analysis refers to the computation of certain measures, right? We try to compute certain measures along with searching for patterns of relationship that exist among data groups. So two important keywords here are computation of the measures and searching for the patterns of relationship. So the computation and searching for patterns will actually help us to build up the story, right? So data analysis through this way is going to help us to provide a story regarding the data that we are analyzing. Any answers that we have received in chat box, or shall I move?
Yes, sir, we have received. So they agree with you that yes, it is a storytelling.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you for agreeing. And I think you all must, whoever is, if you are trying to do some kind of a research or trying to publish, or rather say not trying to do any research or publish, even when you are doing your audit, you are doing your day-to-day work, your duties and responsibilities to the nation through this very noble cause of being a chartered accountant, right? There are tons of stories that you have already built up all throughout your life, right? And I think any chartered accountant in this country, they can easily become a PhD researcher or a PhD doctorate, because you have lots of stories to tell, and those all stories are very, very real, right? Maybe other researchers have to find out a problem, but the CAs in our country, they have already those problems and stories that they are readily facing every day, and they are actually doing the real analysis in the field to provide the answer, to provide the solutions, and to maintain the legal status in the country. So I move forward and taking up this. So we proceed with this analysis. So data analysis can be of majorly of two types. When we have fully a quantitative data set, when we have numbers and all, and when we have a qualitative data sets, that is an interview, description, some kind of a topic, right? So it is possible through our different tools to analyze any kind of data, whether it is a audio data, whether it is a video data, whether it is a structured or unstructured data, right? All kinds of data we can analyze. And nowadays, our research has developed so much that many good papers are getting published for due to the data that they are choosing, right? Those data, those are very scarce, those data that you face difficulty in collecting, and those data are actually telling some story that is hidden from the real eye of the audience, right? So we will try to see what are the different ways of this quantitative and qualitative data analysis. So now comes the real question. As soon as we talk about any quantitative or qualitative data analysis, we know from our learning for CA exams also that is there. So why statistics is important in analysis of data? If someone would try to answer, why do you think statistics is important in analysis of data? Fine, so we will wait for the answers and I will hear them soon. So going ahead with this, I think statistics, one part of statistics is that it gives you a descriptive knowledge about the data, what is there in the data and all. But the major part behind using statistics in data analysis is because our target of analyzing this data or telling a story about is the population, right? The population is the whole country, a whole district, or a whole state. But generally, we cannot target this population, right? So if we can tell something about this population, if we can use the directly the census data and try to answer many questions, that is fine. But otherwise, most of the time, what we are doing is either we are selecting a few people or sample from the exact population and we are analyzing, right? So this characteristics of this sample are actually called the statistics, right? And here the main role of statistics comes in, because using a sample they're trying to answer something that is regarding the population. So any answers from the audience?
Yes, sir, we have received one, that is statistic analysis patterns. Basically, they are saying for patterns.
For getting some patterns, fine, yeah, that is true. So statistics helps us to get some pattern readily by the defined uh, measures of statistics, right? We can get a pattern directly from there, that is correct. But what
Apart from that, sir, we have received more responses.
yeah.
Another is it's the science that helps in interpreting the data. Next, statistics provides technique of data analysis. Then another provides collective information to draw the conclusions.
Right. So thank you. So those are some very wonderful answers, and I'd like to bring our answer also in that direction. But where I'm driving it to is when we are trying to answer something that is related to the population, and this is true for any field of social science wherever we are working, it is very difficult, nearly impossible to collect data for the entire population, and we are generally doing our research on a specific sample of the dataset, and that sampling technique and others we have already heard in the last few lectures that have been conducted, last few webinars. But why do we need statistics here is because the theory of sampling says that when we are trying to find out a relationship, right, we are trying to study a relationship that is existing between a population and a sample, there is a chance that we have to theoretically and mathematically define the relationship and prove that this relationship is significant. To prove that relationship is significant, we need the help of statistics. So unless the statistics proves that yes, this sample is exactly the representation of the population, our research will never be complete. So to complete our research, we have to rely on statistics to fulfill this necessity, and that is known as the central limit theorem, right? The significance of the central limit theorem is that it permits us to use the sample statistics to make some inferences, to give some inferences about the population parameters that is unable to access, that we are unable to access. And we actually don't know what is happening in the population parameter, but we are making some inferences or judgment based on the sample statistics. So we will see that throughout the analysis of data, whatever model we use, whatever techniques we use, or whatever we are going to do, that all is relying, ultimately is relying on statistics, right? So you can see that if this is the population distribution, right? So I hope there is some already some webinars, or you have some idea about what is a probability distribution and all, right? So I'm not going in the detail of that, but this is the population distribution. And from this population distribution, we have the mean of this distribution and the standard deviation of this distribution. I'm not going into the meaning of this terminologies. So if you anyone wants me to discuss, you can write in the chat box. Otherwise, I'm proceeding. And we can see that the sample frequency distribution is here. So we have collected certain samples like this, which is a representation of this population, which represents every part of this population. And from there, we are trying to derive a inference through these samples, through these different samples. And when we put all the mean of these samples, actually this sampling distribution is going to give us a mean of this sampling distribution. And this mean, we are going to check whether this mean is exactly representing our population mean or not. That is the main target, right? Whether this distribution is exactly representing our population distribution or not. So exact matching of the distribution may not be possible, but at least we can match the means of this population with sample, and then only we can put up some inference that how sure we are about our analysis. So do we have any answers?
So we have received a question. Can you give a practical example of the central limit theorem?
Practical example of a central limit theorem.
Central limit theorem.
All right, fine, no problem. So central limit theorem is actually telling us that when we are collecting the different samples from a population, right? It's like picking up a small part of that population, but that small part may not be truly representing the entire population, right? So when we collect more and more samples, that helps me to answer the next question. So when we have more and more those samples, like n equal to 10 here, so it is not exactly representing the overall population, and there are differences because the sample size is small, right? And then we have taken n equal to 100. It is little bit representing, but there are differences. N equal to 1000, right? So the more we collect these samples from our populations, and the more the number of samples that we have, it will closely represent our population, right? It is a difficulty for us to do a research directly on the population, but we can have a higher sample size that represents our overall population, and then only we can make some inferences. So the central limit theorem is also telling the same thing regarding our analysis, that it is used sample statistics to make inferences about the population parameters. So we always call the mean, standard deviation of a population as parameter, and for the sample we call it the statistics. So the sample statistics is helping us to make inference about the population parameter without knowing about anything about the shape of the frequency distribution of the population, other than what we can get from the sample. So a good example can be like in your regular day-to-day analysis, maybe you are doing review auditing different companies, right? So these companies, in this picture, these different people can be representation of different companies. And if you are making some inference that having a woman in the board of a company is actually, and if that woman is also part of the audit committee, then there is a good decision making happening in terms of finance, right? Financial decisions are made very good. This is one hypothesis, that if there is a woman in the board as well as a woman, that same woman is given the responsibility of audit committee, then there is a good amount of audit, or the audit is being strictly monitored or strictly done. So then you can collect the data not from each company that is there in India. Maybe you can collect the data of some sample companies that represent the entire population, right? That represent the entire set of companies that are present in India. And from this sample, that is the representative sample of this population, where all kinds of companies are there. Maybe let's say all kinds of industries are there, all kinds of sectors are there, and all kinds of companies that are having good representation of women in their board as well as in the audit committee, or may not be in the audit committee and there. And then maybe you can do a comparison that women, those were not present in the audit committee, and women, those were in the audit committee, maybe they are having some difference, right? There is some difference between the statistics that you are getting, and then you can say that yes, our inference is correct, that if we have a woman that is in audit committee of a company's board, right, and that there is enough power given to that board member to take some decisions, that decision is going to help ultimately the committee. So then this decision is going to help SEBI or other organizations to create a rule that, let's say now there is a rule that a woman representation is essential. Maybe there can be a rule that a woman in the audit committee is also essential, right? So all those decisions are made after doing thorough research, and this research is not always done with the entire population. This research is done with a sample, right? I hope it is clear, right? If any doubt, you can further post in the chat box, right? And for this region only, yes.
Sir, we have received one more question. That is, what is the ideal sample size? And can we say it is same as normalizing also? One more question.
Okay. What is the ideal sample size? So when we do research, I know collecting data and getting sample is a little bit difficult, right? But one principle that we follow is, if you have enough data, right? Let's say if you have daily stock price data and you want to analyze something about a company, then take the daily data. Or if you have minute by minute data, high frequency data, then take that high frequency data. So we should not avoid the maximum frequency or maximum sample size that is available, readily available. If something is available, our task is not to reduce it. But then again, if something is not available, then we can go ahead. Generally, in statistics terms, it is said that a sample size more than 30 to 35 is acceptable, not a good estimate, but is acceptable. But it again depends on the research question that you are going to answer, and whether that research question, for that research question, it is sufficient enough to answer, right? So the data size or the sample size that we are working on, generally if you are working on, let's say, companies, different companies, now you have Nifty 50, maybe you can take 50 companies. But if you are taking only 25 companies out of that, or 10 companies out of that, your result will be more biased, and there will be questions asked by the reviewers that you have purposefully selected those companies only that is going to support your analysis. And this sample is not enough random to justify the overall population, right? So we have to be judicious while we take our sample. So there is no definite answer of the sample size, right? But we can say that a good enough sample size that is available in the ecosystem or in the market, we should take that. If the good enough sample is not available, there are processes to increase the sample size or create a larger sample size, but we should not adopt those processes if the real data is available, right? I hope I could answer it. Fine. And there was another question of normalizing, right? So normalizing comes a little bit later when we are trying to actually, not in the sample selection, but normalizing will come when we are trying to make our data, assess our data for further research, right? So when we are trying to process our data and get a further research, then we generally sometimes normalize our data to remove the effect of the different outliers, or remove the effect of different data size and others, and so that we can get a consistent answer, right? And if you mean by normalizing is a normal distribution, right, creating a normal distribution by using a higher sample size, then definitely you are correct, because our target is to mimic the distribution of this population through this. So this means will always be coming from the normal distribution. So when we take all the samples from this population and we take the means of this each sample, we will find that this sampling distribution of the mean is necessarily a normal distribution, right? So our target is that we have a sufficient kind of a distribution, normal distribution, that is going to help us to answer our questions that are related to the population. Fine. Any question?
No, sir, we have received that. It's clear now.
It's clear. Fine. Thank you very much. So it's very good that we are in the online mode and we are still interacting a lot. And I'm very much enthusiastic about that to continue with my presentation. So next question comes up: what are the types of analysis that we can do? Right. So I said there are n number of types of analysis in data analysis in research, and it is impossible to collate everything into one presentation or one book or one article, whatever you say. But we generally, through this webinar, I would like to introduce you to some common statistics and topics, right? Common things that are used in every research. So in any research paper, you will find the application of these techniques, and these are the very basic of all kind of data analysis. And then gradually, at the end of this webinar, I'd like to introduce the new topics that are being used now in the research and that help us to publish papers, right? So first of all, data analysis can be broadly divided into two sections. First part is data processing, right? Without processing, doing analysis is like a mistake, right? When we go to cook, if you are not clearly washing the vegetables, cutting it properly, and then putting it for cooking, your food is not going to look good. And if your food is not going to provide you the real taste that it should provide, right? So it's truly applicable for data analysis as well, that you have to process the data properly, and then only you can proceed for analysis. And there are various way of processing the data. Data processing itself is a huge topic, and the better you are processing the data, the half of data analysis is already done here. So let's see what are the topics in processing. First part is editing. So editing the data does not means manipulating the data. We have to be careful about this, that whatever data that we are collecting, we are keeping its real essence there, and we are actually not changing the real scenario of this data. Otherwise, our results will also be manipulated. So data editing necessarily means to organize the data in a proper format that helps us to analyze further. If the data is scattered, if the data is mixed, many variables are mixed, many informations are mixed, we have to segregate them. We have to segregate which are the categorical variables. We have to segregate which are the nominal variables, which are the ordered, which are the intervals. And if there is some mismatch, if there is some mixture, we have to change them accordingly to match our requirement, to match the real question that is being asked through the research, right? So data editing, coding, right? When we do a qualitative data analysis, we take the interviews. Properly coding the interview into our given context is very much necessary. So there are lots of coding software also available right now. But generally, when we do manual coding or manually recording this data for further analysis, we have to be very, very careful. So data processing involves this editing, coding, classification of the data, and tabulation of the data. Because why tabulation is necessary? Some of you can answer in the chat box. This is very much necessary, that why this processing part is so much important. And then only we should go ahead for the analysis. Because if this part is not done, we will see that what are the parts in analysis, and they will not make any sense, right? So while we do the processing, after doing the tabulation, proper editing, coding, classification, and if we have properly tabulated our data according to the variables, according to the research question, research focus, then only we can go for a descriptive analysis, right? So the first stage, as we have seen earlier also, the first stage is a descriptive analysis. And then we can go for an inferential analysis. So we have seen that we have collected a sample data. That sample data has to be processed, edited, coded, classified, and then properly tabulated, right? And then only we can go for a data analysis part. But initially we have to go for a descriptive part, and then we have to go for an inferential, right? So under descriptive part, we have now different scenarios. There can be a univariate data, right? You are just using one variable and you are trying to analyze it. One variable can be like you are trying to predict the stock price of a target company, that where the stock price is going to move, right? Your research hypothesis may be that due to this scenario, the stock price is going to fall. So that is a univariate kind of relationship, and you are trying to forecast it, maybe, right? So there is only one variable. There can be a bivariate kind of relationship. There the answers are maybe only two variables are there, right? So in bivariate relationship, the analysis will be different, right? So there you will not analyze like in univariate, you are going to analyze the characteristics of the variable only, right? But in bivariate case, you are going to analyze what is the relationship or association between the variables, right? And there can be a multivariate analysis. So till here, I will stop to take any questions or suggestions, and then I will move on to the inferential part.
So, sir, there was a question being asked from your side. For that, response is received. Tabulation sets the foundation for an analysis. It tells how do you want to represent the data.
Right, definitely. So the half the work of analysis is actually done when we are doing the tabulation, because you have a clear focus. If you have properly tabulated, half your problem is solved in the data analysis, because now you can see the data, you can visualize the data, and then you can also make certain inferences that may be coming in after using some software or anything else. So most of the we have seen most of our senior people, those who are in our maybe in academics, maybe in chartered accountants, those who are senior, they can actually find the inference quickly by just looking into the data, but not any unstructured data. That representation, that report has to be very structured, and that is why the stress on a report that is controlling everything, right? That is having all those components inside, so that a real analysis can be made. So that's a very good answer actually. So now from descriptive, we move on to inferential analysis. The first part of inferential analysis is parameter estimation, and the second part is hypothesis testing. So this is just an overview of what is data analysis. We will go into each and every topic one by one. So going with the descriptive analysis part, I'm not touching upon the processing part, because data collection and processing has been already done in the last webinar. So I'm moving ahead with the analysis part, right? But if you want to know, there are different parts of this processing. There can be a missing data, right? So how to fill up the missing data, whether at all you should fill up the missing data or not. There are different questions to be asked. Do you need to standardize your data or not? Whether you need to do some further processing of your data or not to use it for the analysis, or if a data is not at all useful for your analysis and that can corrupt your model. All these questions will come from the processing part, right? So we have to be very punctual about this, and then only we can move ahead with the first part, that is the descriptive analysis. So even before the descriptive analysis, what we generally can do, and I also generally follow in while doing a research, is visualizing the data, right? So there are n number of tools available for visualizing the data, right? Data visualization, I hope this is being covered in many courses. So I'd like the audience to answer maybe some data visualization techniques or tools that are available, just the keywords, so that we can understand that what exactly it mean by data visualization and what is the purpose that it fulfills, right? Fine. So going ahead with the descriptive analysis, right? There can be a univariate analysis, there can be bivariate analysis, and there can be a multivariate analysis, right? So multi covers all, many more than two variables are there, and univariate and bivariate are separate. So I'm not going with the definition of observation and variables because those I think have been already covered when we talked about research formulation and hypothesis. So variable definition, observation definition, that is quite known to us. So I'm focusing on univariate descriptive analysis. And univariate descriptive analysis is going to give you a lot of answers that are equally important in multivariate, but there we focus on one by one this analysis. So univariate data analysis says that we have to know the measures of central tendency, measures of the dispersion and the skewness. So while I continue with this descriptive analysis, maybe some of you can answer that what are the measures of the central tendency, dispersion and skewness. And remember always, we are talking here about the sample and not about the population, right? So accordingly, I wait for the answers, but I will continue. Fine. So there is in bivariate, as I said, we try to find out the correlation between the two variables. We try to find out the regression. Now, regression is again a vast term. Regression is having a huge amount of application in different modes, and it itself is can be a like a very big book on what are the methods that can be done using regression, right? And there is association, right? Why we have written correlation and association separately, I will explain that. So association between two variables is also a very important question to be answered, right? And then multivariate is a multiple regression. There are other things also under multivariate analysis, like when we have a multivariate data set, maybe there are many variables, right? One of the tasks is to reduce the number of variables, right? We try to reduce the dimension or size of our analysis, and then we try to create lots of indexes, lots of different factors out of the different variables, right? So that is mainly we can do a factor analysis, we can do a principal component analysis. Those kind of data dimension reduction techniques can be used under a multivariate analysis, right? So I have not written all of them because they are essentially becoming part of multiple regression. For the requirement to fulfill the assumptions and to fulfill the requirements of multiple regression, we generally follow all those kinds of things. And multivariate data, many other things also can be done. We will gradually see what are the different applications of multivariate analysis, what are the different application of univariate analysis, and what are the different application of bivariate analysis. Maybe I can take some answers if they're there, and we will proceed.
Yes, sir, we have received the response. And for the measures of central tendency, we have received mean, median, and mode. And for the dispersion part, we have received the standard deviation.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Any other answer to the previous question, or this is all?
Yes, sir.
Fine.
Till now, we have received this.
Okay, fine. No problem. No problem. So we just move ahead, and we can see that yes, whoever has answered has been really correct. That measures of central tendency is actually the mean, median, and mode, and this is the probability distribution. So we can see that from this distribution, after creating a histogram and the frequency distribution, we can answer many questions, right, for the research data that is there. And mean, median, mode, the kurtosis, the skewness of the data, all these things are giving us many such answers that how the data looks like and what are the, where is the mean, where is the median, where is the mode. And let me tell you that sometimes the descriptive analysis itself provides us most of the answers. And in our real field, when we do real research in our day-to-day life, we actually rely on the central tendency. And we answer many things without even knowing that we are using the central tendencies. answer those questions. And mostly using descriptive data, we are answering our questions. So descriptive analysis is very important. I'd like to show a snippet from a paper. This paper is published in Journal of Corporate Finance, right? And here you can see that different categories of variables are there. And those variables, mean, median, standard deviation, the number of observations are all recorded here. And from here, you can find certain answers for the sample that they have chosen, right? So it gives us certain answers already for the sample that has been chosen. And if you permit, I will just quickly share this paper, and we can see that descriptive analysis is not only just presenting this table, but it also involves some answers to be given along with it, right? So I will just share my PDF. Right. So this is this paper, and I'd like to show this research paper because the research methodology lecture without even showing a research paper would not make any sense, right? So this is a research paper, and this talks about the role of corporate governance for acquisitions by the emerging market multinationals. Evidence from India. You can go ahead. This is a very good paper. You can go and read about this paper. But what I want to focus here is regarding the analysis part. So you can see this is the data final sample, right? Summary of the final sample that has been provided. And it has different countries, it has the ownership pattern, it has the board independence, board business, all those factors are there, right? And then it talks about the data part where it provides you a descriptive statistics, right? So this snippet only I have put in, and you can see this descriptive statistics provides a lots of answer. So in the data part itself, it says we have summarized the final sample of acquisitions in table 1, and they have reported, right, what are the different analysis. So this is table 2, right? They have reported the different table 2, what are the, see, while the treatment firms have higher valuations, that it do not significantly differ from the control firms in terms of ownership and board characteristics. So they've given answers to the real research question, even using the descriptive statistics, right? So various papers can have different modes of providing the descriptive statistics. This is one of my paper where I have also used descriptive statistics, where I have used the different statistics pertaining to the mean, median, mode, and the skewness, the minimum, the maximum, right? Kurtosis, all these things I have used, right? And then I'm trying to answer many questions from here, that what exactly this data is showing. And we have some plots also, right? The figures, the visual approach and all, right? So I've had another question, but I think no one has answered for that question. Maybe I will answer that regarding the types of visualizations that we can use. Do we have any answers for that? Okay, so let's go ahead. But what are the different, please? Any answers?
Sir, not yet. Waiting
Fine,
for
no
the
problem.
responses.
No problem, no problem. So there are different methods of visualizing the data as well as visualizing the result. So result visualization I will show you later on. Simple visualizations can be presenting your data in terms of a let's say a line chart. Maybe I will open up the whiteboard and I can share some insights about it. Maybe to share, maybe I can use the PPT here.
Sir, one response we have received for the graphical display.
Right, definitely the graphical display. So that is what I was trying to say also. So definitely we can use. So what are the different? I have not included any slide for that. So what are the different ways of visualizing the data? So we can write, so one of the basic way of visualizing a data is using a line chart, right? In a graph, you can just plot some lines and it can give you some answers. Then you can have some bar charts, columns, and others. You can have a box plot, right? Box plot is another way of visualizing the data. Now, for your understanding, I'm not going to explain it here, but you can read of this. Now, many papers are using violin plots instead of box plots, right? Then a scatter chart, a scatter diagram can also provide you a lot amount of answers, right? So it's always a good practice to provide the uh, the visualizations for a research paper, and that is going to help the reader also to understand what is going on, right? So moving ahead with our main topic, because we have less time in so fine my system. I'll just remove this annotations. Fine. So I'll just share. Right. So someone already said that the measure of dispersion, right? The measure of dispersion is a variance or standard deviation, right? So using this variance, we have a lot of analysis to be done, because this variance is very much important, right? So the question here is, in a bivariate setup, does two variables change together? Yeah, definitely they change together. They can be interrelated. Like if the market is moving, a very good example is our capital asset pricing model, right? So if the market is moving in one direction, we know that it is stock price is also related to the market, and we can definitely find a relationship between them, and they are also covariant. Another example is our portfolio diversification. So why we have a portfolio diversification? Because there is a covariance between two assets, and it ultimately reduces the risk. And risk is nothing but the variance or the standard deviation, right? So these all answers can be given using variance and covariance. But one problem here is when we do a descriptive analysis, if we alone use a covariance, right, and try to answer the relationship, we will not get a concrete result, because it can be anything, any value, right? So that is why what we do is we divide covariance by variance to get the correlation. Now, correlation is the very first step of understanding a relationship. If two variables are correlated, it's not necessary they will be related, but it gives the indication that there is some relationship. Right. So if we can visualize, if we can plot a scatter plot, and we can see that whether these two variables are correlated or not. And if they are correlated, we can further analyze for the correlation. Right? And correlation is calculated through this. It ranges from -1 to +1. I'm not going in the detail of this because we already know about the correlation coefficient. Right. The correlation is not necessarily to be linear all the times. It can be a non-linear correlation also, non-linear relationship also, right? Strong negative relationship, but non-linear. But correlation does not imply causation, right? So I'd like to hear from the audience also. Does correlation always imply causation? And what do they mean by causation? And causality is the main focus of social science research, right? There is a author, there is a researcher who has received Nobel Prize for finding out the relationship, that is Granger causality, right? In econometrics, we do this Granger causality, but correlation is does not imply causation. So in this figure, you can see that amount of sunburn in and amount of ice cream consumption both can increase and they can be correlated. But the real cause is the dry, hot, and sunny summer weather. Right? That is why it is happening. So it's not necessary if two variables are correlated, they're also having causal relationship between them. And finding out causal relationship, it is having different application. If time permits, I will definitely show how the causal relationship is checked in terms of in the research paper, different research papers, right? Then there is we said the relationship between two variables, right? So if there is a correlation, we can know that there is some kind of association between the two variables, right? And we can then further go ahead for regression. Now, what regression does is it tries to justify the proper relationship between the two. Is a chance of a purely coincidental, or is there a real relationship between the two, right? So we try to fulfill this by, many of you already know, so I will not go more detail of this regression, right? But it is like how far are the points from this a linear relationship between these two variables, and we know there is a slope component, there is an intercept component for a regression, right? So the best fit line that explains all these points, minimum distance from these points, is actually the regression, and regression is having and many amount of applications, right? So these are the basic metrics that we use. So one of the metrics is R square. Generally we don't use R square, but we use adjusted R square, that is adjusted with the degree of freedom of the model that we are using. Degree of freedom consists of the number of variables that we are using, so we adjust with respect to those variables, and then we try to find out the adjusted R square. And this adjusted R square is being used in many papers, right? So I'd like to show you that where it is being used, and this is being used in many papers, and this is one of the main characteristics of defining whether a model is good, bad, or not, right? So I'll just open any paper. So this paper is from 1989, the test of agency theory of managerial ownership, corporate leverage, and corporate dividends, right? So this is a very good paper that we can look into. And we can see that anywhere a regression is done, they will try to show you the relationship between them, and they will try to justify the model by using the R square value. See, the adjusted R square values are given, right? Different adjusted R square values are given for different models. When ownership is used, when leverage is used, when dividend is used. So different ordinary least square is a regression method, right? OLS model has been used, and there you can find that the adjusted R square values are given, and it says that which model is a better model in terms of analysis, right? So this regression model is being used in social science research, and there have been many such regression models. So there is one dependent variable and multiple independent variables, and we are trying to find out that how the relation looks like, right? So we can see there is some significance marks given, right? Significant, whether they are significant or not. So we will come to those points. What does it mean by significance and all, and what are these values and all. So I will come to in a little bit of time again in this table, and then maybe we can discuss. But to understand the basically what is regression, I have given here the details, right? So using the sum of squares, the errors, what are there in predicting this line, right? What are the different errors from the distance from this line? Using that, we can calculate the sum of squares, or how much is explained, how much is residual, and based on that, we can find out the coefficient of determination, that how well the observed outcomes are replicated by the model, right? What is the outcome is very well replicated by the model or not. So this analysis is done through regression. We will deliver more on regression, but before that, I will quickly go into inferential analysis, right? And that will also support my discussion on regression. So in inferential analysis, we have two parts. One is a parameter estimation, one is a hypothesis testing. So parameter estimation, we have discussed parameter is for a population. So while estimating a parameter, we take the statistics from the sample and we try to estimate a parameter. Now that estimate can be a point estimate, and we can just justify that the mean that is there, it is exactly matching with the population or not. Or there can be an interval estimate that gives us a confidence level that our value, our population value, may lie between this confidence level, and based on our acceptance, whether we are 95% we are ready to accept, whether we are 99% we are ready to accept, that will be part of this interval, right? So this point and interval estimate are important, and to measure that we need a hypothesis testing. So hypothesis testing can be both parametric as well as non-parametric. Now, parametric test relies on this assumption that the data set that we are analyzing is coming from a normal distribution. If the sample size is less and we cannot achieve a normal distribution, then generally we take up for a non-parametric test. There are different non-parametric tests also. Those we will discuss what are the non-parametric tests. So any question till now, or shall we proceed? Fine. So I believe there are no questions. So I will proceed. Right. So parameter estimation I have already discussed. Now in hypothesis testing, right? We generally try to what is a hypothesis and how it is formulated and all has been already done in a previous session, so I'm not going into the hypothesis, what is a null hypothesis, what is alternate hypothesis and all. And formulating a correct hypothesis, a good hypothesis, is very very much essential. Then only we can use the data to prove that hypothesis. So hypothesis testing involves to answer whether a probably what is the probability that a sample is coming from a population or not, right? So when we have samples data, and then we can go ahead for a hypothesis testing using that sample. And we said that why we need statistics. So here comes the role of hypothesis testing, where statistics is used to prove this, right? Using the standard error. I hope all of you understand about the concept of standard error. What is a standard error? If not, you can write in the comment box. I will explain. Otherwise, we are moving ahead. So what is a standard error? We compute the probability that two means that are there are coming from the same population, right? The sample, it is a representation of the population or not. And we have different statistics. One is the Z statistics, one is the T statistics. And believe me, this hypothesis testing is being used again and again in every analysis, right? So a few minutes back, I was showing a regression result and we were talking about the significance of the coefficients. There also we rely on the T statistics, right? So that T statistics tries to answer the question that whether this coefficient is different than zero or it is a zero, right? It is zero means there is no impact of that coefficient. If it is different than zero, then definitely there is impact. So we are again trying to prove whether that coefficient is having any role to play or not. That means that model that we have taken or proving on a sample, that model is a representative of the population or not. That is the sole purpose of doing this hypothesis testing. And we will go in details of hypothesis testing, because hypothesis testing is the main part of data analysis. However big a model you choose, however critical a model you choose, inside the model we are doing different types of hypothesis testing only, and there are different tests of doing this hypothesis testing. Fine. Any question till now? All right. So for doing this hypothesis testing, first is to formulate the null hypothesis and the alternate hypothesis. Then we have to select the appropriate test. Now this selecting the appropriate test comes under data analysis, right? Choosing the level of significance comes under data analysis. And then calculating the test statistics. So formulating is one part. And after that, this whole part comes after data collection and data analysis. From there only we can reach a conclusion. So to connect the formulated hypothesis with our research conclusion, we need this whole test, right? What are the different tests that are there? And then only we can find out whether our research conclusion is supported by the statistics or not, whether it is statistically significant or not. So many of you have done already basic statistics, so I will not go in the details, but for just putting up these points, I will show that how this statistics has to be formulated mathematically to support the data analysis, right? So if your claim, if your written hypothesis consists of is equal to, is exactly, is the same as, or is between something, or is at least, or is at most, right? Then we use then hypothesis test will be two-tailed test, where we are trying to find out that our mean value of our sample is equal to or is exactly same as or is remaining in between, right? So we are going to choose a two-tail test. Tails here are the distribution, probability distribution tails, right? If it is at least, means if the value is at least more than this or at least less than this, then we use a left tail. If it is at most some value, then we use the right tail, right? And if we are having the alternated hypothesis similarly will be is not equal to, is different from, has changed from, is less than, is below, all those things, right? So all those possible outcomes has to be converged into this. And right tail test can be like mu greater than the value. This mu is the population parameter, right? Then left tail test, mu less than the value, not equal. So all these things are done here. This is the claim for the hypothesis. Now, in the hypothesis testing, we broadly classify the hypothesis test into two domains. One is the test of association, another is the test of differences. So, we are trying to first test whether the means are related or not, whether the proportions or the ratios that we are evaluating, whether they are related or not. And then we are testing the differences, whether the means and proportions are difference between the means are related, having some value or not, whether they're same or different, that we are going to test through the hypothesis test. And there are different hypothesis tests. Some of the parametric tests are if there is only one sample, right? Then we can have only t test or z test, and then we are trying to find out whether this mean is equivalent to the population or not, whether this single standard deviation is same as the population or not. But if there are two or more samples, we are actually comparing them, whether these two samples or the two populations are exactly different or they are same. That we are trying to see, right? So independent sample as well as dependent sample tests are there. So different t-tests, pair t-tests, those are there. And there are also non-parametric tests. What are those? Those we will see. So this is a broad summary of all the tests that are there, right? So generally we do a Z test when we have a good amount of data from the population, and we can represent it and we can do the analysis directly using the population, right? So here we can see that how the Z test is being used, how it is calculated, right? And how it is being used in the analysis. Then one sample t test is there. The test if the average of a single population is equal to the target value or not, right? So t test and z test, can anyone tell what is the difference between these two? When do we use z test and when do we use t test? So we are less interacting, that is why I'm putting up this question, right? When do we use a z test and when should we use a t test? I think these are basic statistics, so we will not go in much detail of it. Many of you are already knowing about this, right? So then there can be a paired sample t-test, there can be two sample t-tests with equal variance, there can be a two sample t-test with unequal variance, and the formulas of those t-tests changes, right? So from these things, we are just analyzing what is the purpose. So paired t-test, the purpose if the average of the differences, right, between paired or dependent sample is equal to a target value or not. What is our target value? Our target value is the value that is given, and that we are trying to prove that this population's target value is this. So we are trying to prove that. Then there can be a two sample t-test. So where they are testing test if the difference between the averages of two independent populations is equal to a target value or not, right? So when there is same variance, we can use the same formula. When there are different variance for the populations, unequal variances, we have a different formula, right? And how do we select, how do we prove the null hypothesis or not? So if our null hypothesis values, if our p value or the probability value lies in this region, right, when we have a, let's say, 5% significance level, we can say that this region we are going to accept the null hypothesis. But if our values are in this region, we are going to reject the null hypothesis. So null hypothesis generally says that there is no change, right? But if there is some change, that is captured in the alternate hypothesis. And using that, we generally try to prove whether our alternative hypothesis is actually the hypothesis that we are making in our research problem or research formulation. And we are trying to reject the null hypothesis and prove our support our alternate hypothesis. So these things are already known, so I'm not going in the detail, right? Hypothesis testing.
Sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have received a question for the point estimate. Can you give an example?
For the
Point estimate.
okay point estimate. Okay, the last slide that we were dealing with, earlier slide, I think, right? I will go
Yes,
back
sir.
to that slide. Okay. So when we are using a like a single estimate rather than a range, right? Then we call it a any query. There is some sound coming in. I'm sorry there.
Understood.
All right. So point estimate actually means when we have a
सबसे ऊपर ये भी मैंने कल परसों में इंस्टॉल करा है इसको भी चेक कर सकते
if someone can mute.
एक तो भी मेरी फ्रेंड है साथ की उसकी अभी है 19 की तो गोद है 27
Can we mute this?
ये सारे फ्रीलांसर है
Okay, fine. So when we are estimating a population parameter from a sample, right, we are having only a single number that can be estimated using that sample. So sorry, right?
Sir, there was one more question for the Z test. That Z
Okay.
test is used to test a null hypothesis if the variance is known, and T test is used when the sample size variance is not known.
Yeah, I asked that question and that was the answer. Very good answer, right? So exactly that is what is mean by Z test, and what is the difference between Z test and a T test, right? Fine. So this point estimation, right, when a single number that is used to estimate an unknown population parameter, and interval estimate, how it is different from interval estimate is when we have a range of values used to estimate a population parameter. Range of values comes from where? From this interval, that we are giving an interval from where this population parameter can be estimated. This parameter can be anywhere there, and we are just trying to point out that this interval estimate is exactly representing the population, and we are comfortable with that. So your interval can be less, your interval can be more, but point estimate, we are exactly focusing on that point or that specific value to estimate the unknown parameter, right? So directly estimating that unknown parameter, we are using one population value and we are trying to check whether that is exactly representing or not. So moving ahead, that answer was also correct regarding the Z test and T test. So that is definitely the difference between them. When we are not knowing the population standard deviation, we have to use the T test. Also, when we are having some sample size restrictions, right, then also we use a T test. When there is a low sample size or smaller sample size, of course, more than the required one, then we are using the T test. Right. Then we move ahead. I think there is less amount of time. We don't have much time, so I will quickly move ahead. So this type 1, type 2 error also I think has been discussed in one of the hypothesis formulation lecture I was looking into. So this one, type 1, type 2 error, you are already aware of that. We try to minimize these errors by selecting the different significance level and the power of the test. So power of the test is 1 minus beta and the significance level is alpha. So ideally a statistical test that we are doing, a hypothesis test for a research, it should have a low significance level and a high power. Then it will give us a very good decision, right? Now the question comes, we have seen that t-test can be done till where we have the number of groups are less than 2 or 2, right? When 2 groups are there, we can do a paired sample kind of a t-test. But when there are more than 2 groups, we have to do ANOVA and the chi-square test. So chi-square test is also known as a non-parametric, sometimes a non-parametric test also. And ANOVA is being used to compare means between more than 2 independent groups, right? So the question here to ask is, are the observations correlated or independent? If they're correlated, we cannot do a chi-square test. If the observations are correlated, we have to do some other kind of test that are names are given here. I'm not going in the details of that. But if the correlations are they are not correlated, we should go ahead with the chi-square test, given the outcome variable is binary or categorical. Like a company is going to be bankrupt or not, there is a chance of credit card default or not, this kind of binary or categorical variables are there, then we can go for a chi-square test which compares the proportions between 2 or more groups. If there are 2 or more groups, we are comparing the proportions using the chi-square test. And ANOVA, when it is used, then the outcome variable is a continuous variable, right? We can continuously measure this outcome variable, and the observations are not correlated, that is independent. So if they are independent, it is, if we are using only 2 groups, it is equivalent to a t-test, right? So in a t-test, we compare the means between 2 independent groups. Independence is the key term here, right? So 2 independent groups, if we are comparing the mean, that is a t-test. If we are comparing the means between more than 2 independent groups, then it is ANOVA, right? Now, why ANOVA is very important? Because ANOVA is ultimately again used in regression, right? So when we are calculating the significance or the whether the regression model at all is significant or not, we do a F test, right? There also ANOVA is involved. So ANOVA is essentially the F test. So what is the ANOVA? For 2 or more groups, test difference between means for quantitative normally distributed variables. If they are not normally distributed, we have to go for a non-parametric test, right? And this is just an extension of t-test. Why? Because when there are 2 groups, if we do ANOVA, it will give the same result or equivalent result as a t-test. So all these things are mostly covered in the basic statistics part. I'm just skipping through it quickly to create the to be, because data analysis is all about these basic statistics and then making the inferences, right? So if we have 3 or more groups, right, we can do what? We can do 3 pairwise t-test and then do a difference between them, right? So rather than doing that, we have to do all at once. Otherwise, our error, type 2 error of the test will increase, right? To reduce that error, type 1 error will increase. So reduce that error we have to do for a ANOVA. And the F test is what? It is the difference in the means of the groups. So ANOVA is done using the F test, where the F value is calculated by variability between the groups divided by the variability within the groups, right? And from here, we are using the variances to find out whether these things are same or not. And there are different types of ANOVAs. ANOVA can be a one way, which is an extension of the 2 sample t-test when there are more than 2 groups. Right? ANOVA can be a trend test where a polynomial trend in the group means is there. ANOVA can be a two-way ANOVA, evaluate the combined effect of the 2 experimental factors. If you are giving 2 factors in an experiment, both are changing simultaneously. Let's say 2 medicines you are adding to a patient group, treatment group, and then you are trying to find out what is the effect. So ANOVA is a better analysis tool in those concepts. ANOVA can be also for used for repeated measures. And if we have a covariance, right, we can use also ANCOVA. That is a one-way ANOVA in which group means are adjusted by a covariation. If there are covariation between this, we use ANCOVA. So we are not going into the details of the ANCOVA as well. Then chi-square test can be 2 types. One is a test of independence. One is a test of goodness of fit, right? So when both your predictor and outcome variables are categorical, predictor means the variable that is being used like the x, and the outcome variable is the y. When both are categorical, we use the chi-square test to find the test of independence, right? And there is another test known as the goodness of fit. There we are using the check whether or not an observed pattern of data fits the given distribution. whether the observed pattern fits the given distribution or does not fit the given distribution. So here we have some observed value, some expected value, and we try to compare them whether the observed and the expected are matching or not using a sum of all this as a chi-square statistics, and we find out the values from the table of the chi-square statistics to match it with the relevant degrees of freedom, right? So the number of categories -1 is the degree of freedom. So we try to find out the chi-square value and the p-value corresponding to that chi-square value to confirm our goodness of fit. And for independence, we have already discussed whether these two categorical variables are related or not, whether they're independent or not independent, that we are trying to see. And from here also we can calculate the same. So to summarize all of this, the Z-test sample size, two populations or large samples, n should be greater than 30. That I was talking about earlier also, what should be the sample size. So generally we consider that n should be greater than 30. Standard deviation of the population is there, and the population mean or the proportion is there, and the distribution is normal, right? And the question is, what do these two populations differ or not? So there we use a Z-test. When we have only the sample standard deviations, then we use the t-test that wonderfully has been answered by one participant. When we have more than two samples, right, we generally check that do any of these three or more samples differ from each other, whether they are same or different, that we try to see. So I have used ANOVA in my research also when I was trying to see whether I did my research in commodity derivatives markets, and there I was trying to see whether this effect of speculation on different commodity variables are same or it is different across time, right? So then I use this ANOVA in my study, and graphically I have represented that. Then chi-square is, are these two categorical variables dependent or independent? We check that, right? So distribution can be any. Why? Because if it is normal distribution, fine, then it will be a parametric test. If it is a non-normal distribution, then it can be a non-parametric test, right? So some of the non-parametric tests are given here, right? So estimating the difference in a quantitative parameter between two independent groups. So if it is a normal distribution, the data is coming, so we can use independent sample t-test. But if it is not, we can use the Mann-Whitney U-test, right? Or Wilcoxon signed rank test. Similarly, if we are finding out correlation between two, we can use a Pearson's correlation. But if it is a not normal data or some other data, right, some kind of ordered data or rank data, we have to do a Spearman's rank correlation. There we have to find out the ranks of each data, and then we have to find out whether the ranks are correlated or not. So these are different parametric as well as non-parametric tests. Generally, we have to fulfill the assumptions to get to the parametric test. If the assumptions are not fulfilled, we go for a non-parametric test. Right. So I shared that I will share some research papers, some examples of this, right? Different analysis that we are doing. So quickly, I will share some examples of the papers that we are already having here. So this is the same paper from Journal of Corporate Finance, right? So see here, one model is being used, difference in difference model, right? So this is one model that I'm not going to explain here. Maybe if you have interest, you can read about this model, how it is done. I will just go to the analysis part of this model, right? And we can see that how these things has been represented, right? This table reports the means of the change in Tobin skew and corporate governance variables a year before and after the effective date of the acquisition, right? So after and before, whether the Tobin skew and corporate governance have changed or not, that is being tested here. So the difference in means t-test. Notice here we are using a t-test. The significance levels of the means are based on the t-test. So they have conducted a t-test to come up with these stars, right, and report them to tell whether they are statistically significant or not. And they have representative here. So t-stat is 1.81, whether it is correct or not, 2.29, whether the differences are same or not, right? So these are all the t statistics. And from the t table, they have compared whether the probability ranges between these 1%, 5%, or 10% levels. And if it is 1%, they have given 3 stars. If it is Within 5%, they have given 2 stars, and within 1%, they have given 1 star. So this is how the results are represented. And you can see they have also used the Kruskal-Wallis test to test the median differences, right? To difference in means, you have used the t-test. For to test the median differences, they have used the Kruskal-Wallis test. Now we have just shortly seen this Kruskal-Wallis name, I think. Yeah. So this Kruskal-Wallis test they have used for 2 samples. They can use this Kruskal-Wallis test. So they have used this Kruskal-Wallis test, right? And they have given the results that whether it is a significant or not. So both parametric as well as non-parametric has been used here to prove that what is the analysis. Now we go to the regression analysis. Let's see how it is given. So you can see in the regression analysis, this is a panel regression. What is a panel regression? I will shortly explain, right? So in this regression, just notice we have this in the brackets. See what is written here. In the brackets, I think the standard errors are given, and based on that, the significance levels are decided, right? So how the t-test t-value comes up? The coefficient value divided by the standard error. That gives us the t-value. And based on that t-value, the significance level is decided. So in bracket, this different values are given. I don't know if this is the t-value or the standard error, if it is should be written. Sometimes it is, yeah, standard errors are robust and corrected. Fine. No, this is the t statistics given in the parentheses, right? So the t statistics is directly given in the parentheses here. Sometimes in some papers you will find the standard errors are given in the brackets, and the significance level generally proves the significance of this result, right? So in regression also we are using this t-test. So t-test is the same thing that we have just done in hypothesis testing. Thus the hypothesis for this is different. In a regression, the hypothesis is different. In a overall research, the hypothesis is different. And based on that, they have provided the answers for this test. And they see they have reported the adjusted R square. The adjusted R square values are reported here. That shows that how good is the model in answering when a dependent variable is promoter ownership and the dependent variable is institutional ownership and all, right? So same way this can be done. So again in this paper we can see some kind of a regression analysis, right? So this is again an autoregressive distributed lag model, and here also we have reported the significance level based on that. So in regression we can use a dummy variable also that codes the categorical variable yes, no, right? What is the impact? We can use the interaction variable where one variable is interacting with the other and how they are impacting, right? And then we can report all the statistics, right? All those statistics we can report. And this part is important. After the regression, there are certain assumptions that we make for the regression that needs to be checked by a diagnostic test, right? That diagnostic test checks the assumptions, whether the data is heteroscedastic or not, right? Whether it is coming from a normal distribution or not. All those diagnostics has to be checked, and then it has to be reported, right? Similarly, other papers are there. So I am not going in the detail because we have very limited time. Maybe I will quickly go to the next topic, that is the multivariate data analysis. So when the variables increases, that multivariate data analysis is there. And this flowchart easily captures all the things that we have just discussed, right? So if are some variables dependent or not, we can check. If the dependence method is there, then we can go how many variables are dependent. Still now we have seen one variable is dependent. So it is is it a metric? One variable can be measured, right? And if there are several variables, if they can be measured or not. If it can be measured, we can go for a multiple regression that we have just seen. Those are all multiple regression. If not, we can go for a discriminant analysis, or we can go for a classification. Discriminant analysis is like a classification. We are classifying the yes, no's, the classifying the defaults or not defaults and all. If there are multiple variables, right, we can go for a ANOVA, multivariate analysis, or MANOVA, right? Or otherwise we can go for a canonical analysis. right? Then if there is no dependence, if they are not dependent, then we can go for a factor analysis. So we discussed if the variables are not dependent at all and interdependence is not there for the dependent variable, right? Then we can go for a factor analysis, right? And then try to find out the common factor that is there or the common structure that is there in those variables, right? To define one index from that. You can go for a cluster analysis from there to find out the different clusters from the data and then do the analysis. So similarly, right? So this is the analysis, and this is again summarized here. So number of explanatory, based on number of explanatory variables, there are different analyses that we can do. So these are all summarized. When many explanatory variables, we can go for a factor analysis. When there are many explanatory variables, we can go for a cluster analysis, right? And based on the data, how this thing should be defined. Then if the models are linear or non-linear, then we can have different models. Like we have seen regression, MANOVA, ANOVA, the discriminant analysis and all. And if there are single equation, then it is fine. Otherwise, there are number of equation. What happens in social science is sometimes there are many number of equations that are interacting. So at that time, we use a structural equation modeling. Now, structural equation modeling itself is a huge topic. So I cannot go in the details of it. But if you want, you can go and search about the structural equation models and how it is done. So some good things about structural equation modeling I have reported here. So there is one measurement model that is part of the structural equation model, which deals with the latent variables. Latent variables which cannot be directly measured, those are the latent variables. And there is a structural model that is a set of exogenous and endogenous, means independent and dependent variables, which are used to find out the relationship. So in structural equation model, we can have a measurement model as well that captures the effect of a latent variable that cannot be directly measured. It has to be measured through something else, right? So this is again a flow chart that shows that whether if they are dependent, what kind of models can be done. If there are multiple relations between the dependent and independent variable, we generally do a structural equation modeling. If there are several dependent variables in a single relationship, we can go for a canonical correlation and multivariate MANOVA analysis. If there are one dependent variable, then we can go for a multiple regression or a multiple discriminant analysis.
Sir, sorry to interrupt, but the PPT is not there. Might be you have.
PPT is not there?
Yeah, you have shared the research papers, no?
Oh, I'm sorry. So,
Yeah, so
okay. My mistake. Sorry. Fine. So I've not shown this, I think. So we discussed about this multivariate data analysis, and the same thing we were discussing here. What is a structural equation modeling, and when we should use a structural equation modeling. So structural equation modeling in social science is used when there are multiple relationships between a dependent and a independent variable, right? So in that time we can use a structural equation modeling. But if there is one dependent variable in a single relationship, then either we can go for a multiple regression. If there is a metric, it can be measured. If there is a non-metric, right, or a categorical or order kind of variable, we can use a logistic regression, different kind of regression that we can use. Logistic regression application is there when we are issued the credit cards, or there is a default, or there is a bankruptcy of a company. The answers are yes or no, right? At that time, we can do a logistic regression to find out the probability. So you can do a logistic regression to find out the probability if a company will go bankrupt or not, and what are the determining variables for that, right? So that is again a more developed topic. So as I said, regression itself is a very, very vast topic that we are discussing on, and there are so many applications of regression. So quickly, if we come, so if I can show you one application of if the time permits, if I show you some newer applications of this models that I want to show that may be of interest to you, because these are some new things, right? So generally we do the regression based on our this mean value. But if there is a relationship in the quantiles, right? So there is a quantile regression where quantiles are the tails of the regression. So you can see this paper where I have used a quantile regression to prove a relationship, right? And there I cannot, because there are so many quantiles, so I have to represent the analysis in a graphical mode. So these are the three-dimensional graphs that are plotted, and it says that whether ecological footprint and the national nuclear energy consumption, they are related or not. If there is more less nuclear energy consumption, there is high ecological footprint and all. So this research talks about all, there is a three-dimensional relationship in different quantiles. So in the lower quantile, what is happening, in the higher quantile, what is happening. So these are some new domains that are opening up due to the interrelationship between different departments, like economics and physics, right? So in physics, this kind of modeling is done. So it is known as econophysics. Similarly, finance is using several topics from the physics and other science domains to develop it. So there are some new models that are coming up, but the basic thing will remain same. The basic thing of the causality and the analysis of the t-test and other things, those things will remain the same, right? So going back to our PPT, so we will just quickly wrap up. Going back to our PPT, what are the different tools that can be used, right? So the different tools are, Excel is a very good tool. We don't have the knowledge of how much vast it is, and general analysis can be done using Excel. Then R is another good tool where you have to write the code. There is no drop down menu, so you have to write all the coding. But it is, if you are a good coder and if you have a very vast knowledge of research, you can use a R software. Python is again such a software where you have to write the code, but there are new versions of Pythons coming in where you have drop down also, like Orange, where you can have drop down also. Gretel, Stata, and UViews, these are all different financial analytics softwares that we generally use for different kinds of data representation and analysis, right? And I wanted to talk about a little bit of different alternative approaches of data analysis. So the basics of statistics and data analysis, the regression part will remain same, but there are some new things like the econometric modeling and all. So using this econometric modeling and all, econometrics is all about the the analysis of models that combines both economics applications, economics theory with statistical analysis, right? So under econometric modeling, generally finance is concerned about time series analysis, the data that is captured at different points of time, right? So if it is captured at different points of time, there is some interrelationship. And in the beginning of the session, we talked about causality, right? So generally we use a term known as Granger causality. So Granger causality has been being used now in many of the papers. Those who are reading different research papers may know, and it proves a causal relationship. So correlation cannot prove, but we can use Granger causality to prove a causal relationship. And there I have a paper that talks on causality in quantiles. So this causality talks about the mean level of causality, but there can be causality in quantiles as well, right? So there can be causality in quantiles. Then in time series, you can evaluate the volatility. That is a Garch modeling, right? So I am just giving broad topics and terminologies. You can go ahead. So finance research has now very much shifted into this time series analysis. And the paper that we have read just now, it is based on a panel data analysis. What is a panel data? It is comprising of both time sequences as well as the cross-sectional sequences. Both are there. Means, let's say for one company, we have collected data for 5 years, another company we have collected data for 5 years. Together, this data we are trying to analyze. Then this is known as a panel data analysis. There can be a time series analysis. There can be a cross-sectional data analysis. So there are, based on the type of data, there can be a different analysis. And time series analysis is also a very, very huge, big topic. But the basics of the t-test, the adjusted R square, the model evaluation, the F test, everything remains same. So if you know the basics, it is easy for us to understand. Then there are machine learning models. So now in finance, many papers, new papers, those are coming in, are using the different machine learning models. What is machine learning? There we generally try to break the data into a training data and a testing data, and then we evaluate a model. So regression, logistic regression also are there in machine learning. There we use the concepts of machine learning to run these models. Clustering, everything can be done using machine learning. So this is again a new domain where machine learning is used. And now many predictive models are using neural network. Many predictive models are using clustering. So being in the finance world of research, we also should think on those lines that we can go beyond the regular or general models that we use, and we can develop a new research that is interdisciplinary. The models are coming from different disciplines, and those are capturing a better insight from the data that we are analyzing, right? So there is the question of how well developed our research model is, and where we can contribute sufficiently in analyzing the data to give a better answer, right, through using different kinds of models. So sorry, right, I hope there are any questions we can answer. Or
So there is a question. Can there be attempts to alter the outcome of a survey by giving wrong results during survey, and how can we find it out through data analysis?
okay, that's a very good question. So in survey, it is possible that the data can be altered. That is definitely possible that data is altered, and many that is actually unethical if the surveyor itself is manipulating some data to match the result. That is totally beyond the research ethics. But if you want to find out whether the uh, surveyee to whom you are putting up the questions, they are altering or they are misrepresenting the data, we generally put up survey questions that are counterintuitive. So it may happen that you have put up a Likert scale in a survey where from 1 to 5 you have to give some rating. So you can ask a question in two different ways, same question, that validates your survey, right? So you can have one question to check whether the person is at all reading the question or not. So you can put, if you are reading this question, then mark on the category 2, right? There is a chance that still he can misrepresent, but still you will be able to know that the person is marking on 3 or 4 Likert scale. That means he is not reading the question at all and he is marking. There is a chance that maybe a person is just marking strongly agree to everything. Then you can put two counterintuitive questions. One question says that, do you think this training session has been useful? Another question can be, do you think that the training session was not at all useful? Right? So then that will answer the question that whether your survey methodology, the data collected is correct or not. From there you can find. Another approach is generally we use this in fraud analytics. If you want to find out if you have collected some data from survey, whether this data is good or not, you can use the Benford's law. So maybe this Chartered Accountant Institute has already done some webinars on Benford's law. So from there you can find out whether the data has been manipulated or not. So there are different approaches of finding out by just plotting the data, finding out the outliers. You can find out whether it has been manipulated or not. These are different approaches that can be used, right? And these are some other techniques. So I said the basis is remain same, but their application changes. So these are different techniques that can be used. And the last ones that you're seeing, the content analysis, thematic analysis, narrative analysis, grounded theory, discourse analysis, these are all qualitative data analysis. So you can do a topic modeling. So if you have a lot amount of qualitative data, you can use it for topic modeling. You can use it for thematic analysis. So some papers are there which talks about financial report readability. You can create an index of how readable is an annual report, and then you can map it with different regression variables. Right? So these are different lots of applications are there. Text analysis. You can use Twitter data to find out the sentiment. All these things are being used new every day the financial research field is changing and newer models are coming in. And if you have to publish good papers, if you have to survive in the research world, if you want to give better insights, we have to adapt ourselves to the different models that are coming up. But we have to be equally strong in the basics that we discussed today. The basics will remain same, but the advanced levels will keep on updating. So it's a dual goal to make our basics strong as well as develop our adaptive skills, right? But what are the limitations? I just kept it, we already discussed it. So data analysis has some limitations because we are dependent on data. Data availability is one limitation. Some research problems cannot be answered if there is no proper data availability. If you don't have a clear objective, you may fail in data collection also if the objective is not clear. If the data is not poorly processed, better processed or poorly processed, then there is a problem of data analysis. Misleading statistics and overfitting of data. If you are using a model that overfits the data, that also is a problem. Then the bias will increase, right? Variance will be less. The outcome will be much, much closer to your outcome, but your data has been overfit with the model. That is also again a problem because your model cannot be used for any other analysis or any other data set. That is again a problem. So this is the overall cycle of the data analysis, data to knowledge to understanding, and from there we are keep on. I think the data analysis to me, it does never, it starts with the start of the research paper and it never ends till the research paper is complete, and it gives birth to another research domain or a research new research problem, right? So data analysis is so much important for any research objective. And finally I will conclude with this thing that data analysis is part science and part art, where you have a lot of data, you process it, you model it, you analyze it, and finally you tell the story. So, all in all, data analysis is all about storytelling and how good you are in storytelling using different models. The using different models is not going to give you any advantage if the story is not well built. So building up the story is very, very much essential. That is part of the art of data analysis. The science part, maybe we can manage and we can be very good, but the art part is also equally important. And we have to develop the skills to tell a better data storytelling. Where our seniors, our well experienced people, they can help us in getting better insights from the analyzed result that we have. So that was all about this. I think we could complete in time. And if you have any questions, please put forward. I would love to answer them. Any questions, any feedback that you have, please definitely put ahead.
Sir Ramanathan ji has responded that thanks for the session. The session was really very good, and he interacted even in between through his responses and even asked a number of questions. So thank you, sir, so much for your interaction part from our side.
Thank you very much, Ramanathan ji. And really, I also enjoyed the interactions and the answers that you have given. Those were really wonderful. Thank you very much.
So we are just waiting. If you are having any questions, you can put in the chat box.
Till the time some answers come, I would like to say this analysis of data is such a vast topic, means each and every point can have a separate webinar or separate workshops altogether, like different time series analysis, different statistical analysis and all. And equally will try to club all of them to give an overview. Actually, it's a very satellite overview kind of this overall topic that we try to put up. And I hope I could do justice with the topic that was there, and we could complete this session.
So you were very good enough. Glad you have covered each and every topic in a very crisp manner, and the audience were also interacting side by side. So even in future, we could plan for the more detailed sessions they have got an overview, and in future we can plan with sir more detailed ones so that they can have more insight into the topics.
Definitely.
So sir, we have received a question. With the advent of AI and machine learning, how has it impacted the data analysis? Has it made it easier and time to market to reduced? Has it made it easier and the time has reduced? Something they are trying to ask in regard to this.
Okay, so I would like to, this is a very, very good question. So I would like to say that with the advent of AI and machine learning and different this advance in internet and other tools, I think it has made it easier as well as difficult at the same time. Why I'm saying difficult? Because now we have a lots of data being generated every time, right? As the models have become better, the level of data output that is coming in, the level of data that needs to be analyzed to come up with the insight, that has also increased, right? And the models, those are trying to build up more accuracy and all. And in this thing, we are using so much of computing power and trying to fit, but the biases are also increasing. So we have to be careful. Sometimes we see in our research that a simple regression model can answer better than a difficult AI or a deep learning model. And those times we should be judicious in using a simpler model compared to a very critical model. And the main part is now explainable AI that is coming in now. So if you are using some AI model or a machine learning model, it has to be enough explainable. And then only the research can be justified, because it ultimately becomes a black box to the general audience that what is happening inside and how it is being proved. So that balance needs to be maintained to come up with the answer.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Everybody's response wonderful. So it was nice that sir has taken such brilliantly and such expressively the complete session. Throughout the session, we had a flow, and it was all that we have completed on time. So now I would like to thanks the on behalf of research committee. I would like to extend my warm gratitude to our esteemed chairman and the vice chairman of the committee, that is Dr. Anuj Goyal sir, CA Dr. Anuj Goyal sir, and CA Kotha S. Srinivas sir, the vice chairman of the committee. Further, I would like to congratulate the Dr. Amit Kumar Agarwal sir, the secretary to the research committee, for basically visualizing and idealizing this wonderful series that we are heading towards. And sincere thanks to the speaker for the day, Dr. Arunava Bandyopadhyay ji, for giving his valuable time and sharing wisdom for all our participants. And a wide round of applause for all our participants who attended the session and attentively and participated and even interacted with the speaker very continuation basis. So thank you so much to all. And to inform, the next session we will be having on 20th November. The timing would be same, that is 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And the topic would be taken up will be research publication and report writing. So I would request all the participants to have that session also, because that is something, if you don't do that, then your story would not be completed, because that is the last part we will going to have in our series. So thank you once again to one and all. And thank you so much, sir, for your presence and for the session that you have delivered. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the research committee also. So well organized this program was, and there was no technical glitches, nothing at all, and it was so smoothly being handled. So I have been participating in the past research seminars also, and I found it very, very good presentations that develops the knowledge and all. Thank you very much, and thank you for providing me this opportunity. Thanks a lot, and thanks to all participants.